السلام عليكم وعليكم السلام السلام عليكم وعليكم السلام السلام عليكم.
Welcome to Somali Day. It's part of Refugee Week, and today the whole point of today was to dispel some of the myths that might, that might be projected in the media and have led to some misconceptions. We'll start off with Derrick McConnell.
Liban, thank you very much. If somebody has been granted refugee status, then they are able to access the provisions, the family reunion provisions, which are now contained in the immigration rules, which allow a refugee to apply to have their spouse, if they have one, and any minor children under 18 who were living with them at the time they left Somalia, they're entitled to have them come to the UK to live with them permanently.
Is the process to becoming a British citizen going to be made more difficult? I mean, they are saying now you must know English, you must do community service. How feasible is that to your experience?
Well, there are changes that have been saying that it's going to become more difficult to become a British national. And it is. Up to now, really all you have to do is prove that you aren't guilty of genocide or some other serious criminal offence and have lived in the UK for a relevant period of time. That's no longer going to be the case, and there will be provisions that, in addition to being able to speak English, in addition to be able to pass an exam which tests even those like me who've lived in the UK all my life, I think I've probably failed the knowledge in the UK test, pay astronomical sums of money, but now they're on top of all that, you're going to have to show that you are a good person by doing good works in the community, helping elderly people across roads,
I would like to talk something about a mental illness. The word mental health in Somali is unbearable as the community believe. If somebody who's got mental illness, we believe it's a stigma. And I would like to define the word mental illness. Everybody, as it knows, is unforeseen circumstances brought by difficulties like civil war, economic problems, employment, and for so many reasons that it can affect in different ways, like relationship, housing, so many things. So what I would like to say, there's links between mental health and immigration. Immigration has got a huge link with mental illness. As you know, how difficult it is to make a long journey all the way to Somalia to come into Europe, and a life where you don't know what you're going to expect. The most important thing is we want to work to promote and educate the Somalis, the myth they believe that the mental health is not a disease, it can be curable, it can be helped. And if somebody gets help, early treatment, early intervention, it can be supported.
I'd like to welcome Paul Smith.
I think it's really important to see the members of this community speaking, yes, for the Somali community, but being able to speak for all of Bristol. One of the meetings I had after the election was actually a meeting with people opposed to the mosque in Lawrence Hill. The first thing was huge ignorance. They didn't know why there were a large number of Somali people in Bristol. They didn't know anything about Somalia, apart from, they said, the only things we know about Somalia are what we see on the TV. What we see on TV is people killing each other and pirates. That's all we know about Somalia. We don't really know why people are here, how they've come to this country rather than any other country. They said, isn't Islam at war with the West? It was one of the things in there. They've got no understanding of what Islam is, of what it means to be a Muslim, what your concerns are, and actually your concerns are the same concerns as theirs, because their concerns were about their children's education, their concerns about housing, a whole range of things which, as communities, we all share. And actually, you've got far more in common, you've got far more things where you can make common calls in terms of improving the area than there are things where you might be against each other.
Why the Somali people immigrated from our country? Well, everybody will say Somali people immigrated from their country because of the civil war. There were two problems. One started historically a long time ago, at the time of colonial. And the second one started at the time of the government we call dictator government, the Siad Barre's government. Colonial time, Somalia has been divided into 5 different areas. And from there, there was a philosophy which have been created after that and say why we don't come united together again. And there was always a kind of movement which was saying we have to reunite. And there was a lot of activities, a lot of things responding to that philosophy. And that has been for a long time. And that created war between Ethiopia, Somalia, and other things. At the time of Siad Barre, they followed a new political way we did, which was not familiar in our country, and it was socialist system, particularly communist style. It made also a lot of mobilization within the community. A lot of groups has been mobilized, and this mobilization changed the socio-economic system, how the people used to work, how the people used to live, how the people, and the government made a lot of kind of movements, a lot of mobilization, while they didn't make anything to do with how the people can get jobs, how the people can get, living things in relation to how the people, getting motivated or moving from their places. And there was a lot of conflicts, a lot of people moving from outside of the cities, from the rural area, from the nomadic area. A lot of people came from the outside the cities and came into the cities. The government didn't able to manage that kind of movements. The government later on became in a situation where the people were not equally treated. So that was the basic idea why the Somalia, the civil war has been, taking place and happening. So that's
I have lived in Bristol for around 5 years now. It's a wonderful city and one I enjoy living in. I am happy to call it my new home. I live with my children in a nice house and in an area where I feel I have been very welcomed. I have made many friends from all over the world, and I met most of them in my English classes at college. Sometimes though, when I remember how I got here, I cry. I am always sad to think of it. My family were very happy back home in Somalia. My father was a busy businessman and my mother also ran her own little store. I went to school and I was one of the most popular girls in my whole school. I had too many friends and we enjoyed gossiping in the afternoon on our porches and going shopping. My father always used to tell me off for having too many friends, but I used to tell him I can't help being popular. My mum always used to be amused by our arguments. But when the war broke out, my family lost all their businesses. My father was killed and the remainder of my family were forced to leave our home in Mogadishu to go to Ethiopia. And after many years of living poorly in Ethiopia, my family and I were lucky enough to have come to the UK as refugees. It was a difficult time for us, but we firstly settled in London and after a year moved over to Bristol. Despite the difficulties of losing our wealth and my father in the Civil War, I have had some wonderful memories here in the UK. I married here and I have been educated and I have educated myself further here, and I gave birth to my wonderful children here. Although I sometimes miss my old life and Somalia and wonder how life would have been different for me, I am happy to say that Bristol is my family's new home. And that's the conclusion of Somalia. Thank you very much.